back to the Point Blank Future Music stage here at Dancefair. I'm extremely excited to be joined by one of the fastest rising producers in house music over the past few years. He's released on labels like Hot Creations and Get Physical, and has remixed absolute legends like Green Velvet and DJ Sneak. And he's here today to talk a little about his creative process, the studio equipment he uses. And we're also joined by Joeski, who's one of the guys tearing up Beatport right now, whose track Set My Mind is number 4 on the tech house charts. All right, yeah? Doing all right. So we're just going to talk a little bit about their careers, a little bit their approach to making music. So please put your hands together for Darius Syrossian and Joeski. Nice one. Thanks for coming, guys.
No, cheers for having us.
So let's go straight in with how you started making music. I know that, well, for anyone who doesn't know, you started a record store, is that right?
Yeah, I used to run Global Beat Records and Crash Records. So I did that for 14 years before I even started producing. So as a producer, I can say that age doesn't mean anything. You can start as late as you want, because if it's inside you, it'll always come out of you. So because I was DJing and running a record shop, I never really had time to produce. So I was trying to teach myself whenever I had some time. And then when vinyl started going downhill in like 2009, I knew that I don't want to leave this kind of industry, what I love. I love this thing. And, I had a degree in design. I thought, well, I've got to go get a job in that now. But I remember sitting there thinking to myself, it's not what I want to do. I love house music and techno, So I gave myself 6 months to see what I can do producing. And every track I made got signed by big labels, but I hadn't actually done anything before that. So age doesn't really matter, It's how much, if you really want to do it, you'll do it, But it's just finding the way you work to be able to get the tracks out of you, because it's inside you. You have to get that out into whatever format you use to produce. I've seen people arguing all the time. You've got to use Ableton or use the hardware or software. I don't think any of that matters as long as you get the final result of what it is you want. So I get a lot of inboxes, and I try to message, reply to all my inboxes on Facebook and stuff like that. And I'm always asked for tips. What do you do? But for me, I think find your own way of working, and don't read manuals and think you have to make a bass line like this or you have to make a lead like this, because some of the ways I work, I've done tracks with lots of people like Hector Couto and stuff, and when I tell them how I make music, they laugh at me like, is that really how you do it? Because it's a really long-winded way of doing it, but it works for me. So, as long as you get that end result, that's what matters. So.
Sure, and I mean, inevitably, the record store and your passion for music would have informed your productions,
100%,
consciously or subconsciously.
No, 100%.
Was there a moment where you sat down to make music straight away and you went, "Whoa, I can actually feel all this heritage in my tracks"?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that working in the record shop, I understood, because a lot of my stuff, as people know, is like dance floor. It's aimed for the dance floor. When I make tracks, I want people to dance, so that's my style. But with the Sankeys album, I made a lot more deeper stuff as well. But I think working in the record store every day for like 14 years, you bring customers are coming in asking you what they like, what and you've got to find the tracks for them, the vinyls. I think you might like this, or you might like this. I think in my head I worked out what it is that makes people tick about what they like. I worked out what kind of bass lines makes people interested, or what kind of drum patterns. And if somebody says they like techno, whether it's Detroit techno or German techno or whatever, So when I'm making my tracks, I remember kind of all the customers, my regulars that used to come in, and I remember, oh yeah, I used to like that break, like for example that Freaky D track I made. It's like a hip hop, breaks down into a slow hip hop thing. I never actually was going to release that. I nearly deleted it before I released it. I actually nearly deleted it, and then I played it out, and I can't remember who it was, heard it and was like, oh my god, what's this? Give it to me, because I actually thought, this no one's gonna like this. So sometimes you can get too critical of yourself as well.
You never know what people are gonna like, so it's just I mean, I come from a DJ background. Like, I started making music to keep DJing, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? I was DJing in the 90s, and that was kind of like the next step, was to keep moving forward, was to make records, And that's so I came into production from that mindset, from a dance floor mindset. So it's always kind of like with that in mind is how I went about it. Just kind of similar what Darius is saying.
Yeah, so you can start being too critical and thinking too much about, is this good, is this wrong, and then you lose focus stuff. But
totally,
just do it always from the heart. If you do anything in life, whether it's whatever it is, if you do it from the heart, it'll come out good.
From a kind of traditional songwriting point of view, you start with the chorus.
Yeah.
And work to the verses and the intros.
Yeah, although I'm not very good. I know I can understand chords and stuff, but I can't. Like, there's a lot of jazzy keys in a lot of my tracks, but I actually cannot play the piano, so you don't worry about that either. You don't need to be. In fact, a lot of people I know who I've engineered for who say they're musically trained, and because they're musically trained, their mind is too much thinking in that musical process. And I think the beauty of house and techno is that it kind of connects with the human instinct to dance to the beat of the drum. So it's not going towards a melody that makes us like it. It's more about that rhythm and the groove. So, you know what I mean?
And it's sample-based music too, so it's something that, and I say that in the sense of like, it's everything comes from an idea, which is, you don't necessarily have to sample another sound, but in your head, it's an idea that you have of something that you've heard. It's recycled music, man. That's what we do.
So you mentioned it's always got to have that one thing that someone can relate to, wants to dance to. What is that for you?
I think the bass line is the soul of the track.
For me, it's the groove. If I can listen to a groove for 3 hours, and it could be the simplest thing, and but if the groove is, the way I look at it is, if I can listen to it to this loop for 5 hours, it's a good track.
Yeah, exactly. I was actually he's totally right, because this is one of the tips I got to myself as well, was when you mess around and you think, oh, this sounds great, sometimes you just want to have one of those days when everything sounds great. It's actually not that great. But the way to test if that is right is, what I do is, my studio used to be near my kitchen. I've moved house now, but my previous studio was right next to my kitchen. So when I got that groove and I thought, this is right, I'd leave it on, I'd go and cook for half an hour, I'll wash up. And if I came back and I wasn't sick of that groove, then, okay, it's passed the test, now we can turn this into a track.
The cooking, washing up test.
Yeah.
Official.
Yeah.
So
I used to drive my housemate crazy, though.
Yeah, I bet. So anyone else, you mentioned your studio. What's the setup like now, and how has it evolved since the start?
Okay, well, the guys asked me for pictures which I sent in, and I haven't put them up. But it's a lot of old school kit, because when I was working in my record shop, I used to buy lots of hardware and stuff, and I still use hardware. I don't know how to use Ableton. So like I said, it doesn't matter what you use. It's the process of what you get. And a lot of people laugh at me. For my drums, I use a Korg drum machine, but then I sample those and then I put them in Fruity Loops and I mess about with them in there. And everybody thinks Fruity Loops is a joke piece of software, but it works for me. I still sequence on Cubase, so it doesn't really matter. But like I said, I have JD800 if I'm using synths, which is really old. It's like, how old is it now? 25 years old synth. I bought it for £400 10 years ago, but it's like a semi-analog, so I can get crazy. But the thing is, every time I can put the same presets, it sounds different. It depends if my room's cold or if it's summer, because the inside, analog kit. But then I've got the Korg, which I use, ESX and EMX one, which I use for the drums. Again, people are going to laugh. I use a Roland 505 if I'm just getting sub bass. But
it's a great machine, MC505.
Yeah, a lot of people think it's a piece of crap. But if you're going to try and read the manual and do what the manual's telling you to do, it's going to sound awful.
I think it's more like, it's how you use what you have. It's, you can sit here, like I've been to studios where, he's had 15 synths, and I've made better stuff on, on like a smaller setup. It's just a matter of, how comfortable you feel with your equipment and how you use it. And and how much you know it,
and how you abuse it as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do you run things through pedals and effects sideboards, or is it all just getting into the computer?
Well, I still use MIDI, and I kind of like using MIDI because it's not fully timed, quantized perfectly. And I think when things are totally quantized and exact, it sounds a bit too stale. It's too clean. So. Sometimes I record my drums in and they're a little bit out, and I don't quantize them on purpose. Because when you listen to like live music, it's always out, like disco records. I've got loads of disco records, and whenever I'm doing a disco set on vinyl, it's really hard to mix. It's because that was recorded live. It's not, yeah.
Someone can't stay like this at the exact tempo for like 5 minutes.
Yeah,
it's just not humanly possible. He's going to slow down.
So with the drums, I kind of put them out of time on purpose, just a little bit. You can't really tell, but you know, just to make it feel a little bit more real, you know. So that's why I like using MIDI still, you know.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, in terms of the creative process, once it's in, you record it into Fruity Loops, right? And then you like sequence it from.
Well, I edit everything in Wavelab.
Okay.
So, like I said, it's a really long process. So it's totally backwards, man.
It's so crazy how, we do things completely different. Like, I'm hearing everything you're saying, and it's like completely different. But, you know, at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, it's, you know, it's about the groove, man. It's just how you know.
When I made the first tracks I did with Hector Couto, he was like, bro, you're crazy, man. But, you know, it's like, it works. If it works, man.
What's the one piece of advice you give to someone who was just struggling in their bedroom making tracks, kind of just like find themselves going in a loop? I know it's interesting that you mentioned you start with the hook and work backwards.
Yeah.
I think the idea of people starting with a kick, then adding a snare, then adding a bass line, making them work together, that facilitates you being stuck in a loop a lot of the time because there's nowhere to go from there. It's quite minimal.
Well, if I was going to now tell people how to make a track, it would be wrong of me because everybody thinks differently. For example, my friend is a teacher, and he says there's 7 ways of thinking, of learning, and you can't tell somebody how to do something. Like I said, has to come from your heart. For me, it's don't give up. That's the main thing, you know, because it took me years to get to where I have, and if I would have given up, I won't be here. But I think find your way that works for you. That's the main thing. You know, keep trying different ways, speak to different people, ask them how they do it, try that. If it doesn't work, try another way of doing it, you know, and then, but don't think you have to follow any rules, you know. So, I mean, it depends also what you're making as well. If you're making techno, you know, the drum pattern is very important in techno. If you're making house, the bass line is more important because it's more about, the bass line is the soul, the groove of the tune, you know. So, it all depends on what you're making. But I think the biggest advice I could give is don't ever give up.
I agree. I have to second that one, yeah. And just kind of, if you find what works for you and go with that, you know what I mean? And if at the end of the day, you know, if you really want something, you can make it happen. So I'm a firm believer of that. So I live like that way. So.